Right. We will start with at 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. I will start with an announcement. In accordance with Board Procedure BP5, this meeting will be live streamed and recorded and can be viewed on the DASD YouTube channel. So, Rebecca, was this meeting properly noticed?
Yes.
And Ann, can we have a roll call?
Sure. Jan Berg. Here. Brian Coker.
Here.
Sue Esser. Here. Jeff Hahn.
Here.
Linda Lenhart. Here. Gussie Lewis.
Present.
Gail Lovick.
Here.
Stephanie Sarr.
Here.
Megan Taylor.
Here. Thank you. That brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To the mission, vision, and equity statement.
The mission of the DeForest Area School District is to provide an excellent education and engage, challenge, and inspire all students to pursue their full potential. Vision statement. The DeForest Area School District is committed to a culture that honors knowledge, respects individuals, demands excellence, fosters lifelong learning, and supports relationships that strengthen individuals, families, and community. Our equity statement. We believe every student can learn and deserves equitable access to high quality, rigorous, and engaging learning opportunities. So we will ask questions, foster relationships, manage resources, and create systems to increase and sustain access, equity, and safety for all learners.
Thank you. That brings us to approving the agenda. Would somebody care to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. That brings us to board business, presentation and possible approval of board policy R2 academic performance. Welcoming up some speakers.
Yeah, so we are welcoming up 3 directors, our Director of Instruction, Chris Smith, Kate Savitich, K6 Director, and then Diana Hadrich for Student Services. So
Great.
we're going to turn it over to you guys, and I will bring up the talking points. Hi.
So I'll give you a little overview. I just hung up the slide deck. So there we go. So we want to go through first the strengths that we saw in the board report. So one of the strengths we saw is when we look at the grades 3, 6, and 8 forward literacy, we were above the state in every single one, and actually some of them over double digits over. That was a strength.
Yeah, same with ACT reading. We scored above the state by 0.8. Very proud of.
All right, so areas for growth that we noted. One of them is still looking at the forward data for 3rd, 6th, and 8th grade. When you look at the subgroups, when we disaggregated it in indicator 2. Our multilingual learners in grades 3, 6, and 8 were below the state level. Additionally, students at 8th grade, who are not economically disadvantaged, who have a disability, and who are white did score below the state as well.
And then one of our areas is ACT writing. We fell below the state by 0.1. And I'll highlight in a couple slides, we have some action steps that we're going to work on with that. And then specifically looking at our subgroups too, there are quite a few that fell below the state on writing as well. So again, we'll talk about that in just a little bit.
All right, so we did kind of a combination. I know you appreciate when we were able to go back to last year's board report, take some of the action items and talk to you about follow-up. And as we were doing that work, we realized that a lot of them, it is a progression of the work. So sometimes our action steps this year are because they're a progression or add-on from that last year. So we're kind of combining those 2 areas. So last year in our action steps, we had mentioned that 4K was piloting Amplify. We knew that last year we adopted Amplify K8 in literacy. So last year we just had some of the 4K teachers piloting. This year they are all implementing Amplify. They received training in August and they meet monthly anyway as a PLC, but incorporated into that time is collaboration and discussion on science of reading, on best practices, and just implementation and how it's going. Another action item, we had talked last year about supporting our multilingual teachers. And so as a follow-up, this summer, they did receive training from Amplify with the language studio portion of Amplify, which is their resource to support multilingual learners. And as we think about the new curriculum and how we've shifted literacy instruction, it really is very much working with complex texts and building vocabulary. And there's just a high level of rigor. And so as our staff are making adjustments, thinking about how we support our multilingual learners, the training through Language Studio has helped them provide scaffolds for those complex texts, pre-teach the vocabulary. And then all of our multilingual learners have also engaged in learning with CISA 2 on the LIFT framework, which is also around literacy and integration, and then combining those practices to support our learners in the classroom while maintaining the rigor.
Another action step that kind of to Kate's point that we sort of was an ongoing one. So it was on the action, those action steps from last year, but are kind of moving forward is around our co-teaching and co-design models with both our special education staff, but then also our multilingual staff as well. And so we really are targeting our caseload levels. And so this time last year, we were working on kind of building up our caseload kind of projections and being able, so we hired quite a few staff members and so that our case managers and our multilingual staff have the capacity to be able to be in those spaces to do some of that design work. And so really making sure that that continues to be a priority as we move forward. We also provided a lot of professional development around co-design. So this summer we had 85 staff members participate in Yes We Can training. And really it's kind of like about that mindset of like we can take the grade level curriculum and make it accessible for all. And so like the tenets of how to break down our standards and really think about how to modify or accommodate or design lessons so that everybody can have access no matter where you are in comparison to that grade level standard. And then we're continuing to build that capacity as we think about our current staff. And so each month our case managers are coming together and really that's a focus of every month of our meeting is really what is our co-design looking like? How are you able to get in the right spaces and do the right work with our general education partnerships so that we continue to make that amplify and all of our literacy practices accessible to everyone so we continue to make progress in those areas. And then we want to kind of continue to build that as we think about this summer and going into next year. How can we kind of spread that? So 85 staff was a great starting place, but we know that this work is happening in every single classroom. So thinking about how can we continue to grow that ability.
And then we wanted to share that, again, last year, we know at kindergarten through 8th grade, we implemented a new literacy curriculum. And so now we're into year 2 of it. And so we work with that. And so as you think about the last few years, we spent a lot of time with staff on understanding what are the core elements or key elements that are needed to help our learners become readers, proficient readers. So this year, when we think about standards-based learning, that is helping build on that because now we're making sure we're taking the state expectations, the state standards, and really translating that into our work in our classrooms. So how do we maintain those core elements and instructional practices, helping our learners reach those standards, those learning outcomes that the state has identified?
Yeah, and at the secondary level, writing is something that has been an area of focus. So last year we had some teachers pilot a new program called Quill at the 7-8 levels. And that's a program really that's supporting grammar to be able to help students with their writing. And it went really successful. We tried that in the spring of last year. And then this summer we had teachers do some more professional development around it. So now all of our teachers, 612, our ELA teachers are using that program to really help and support students as a supplement. So that's something that is going really well. I was just in a classroom last week of 9th grade students and they took 5 or 10 minutes to go through and do lessons on it. I've seen the same at the middle school. So the incorporation of that has been really helpful in terms of intentional time with students on their writing and their grammar. And then another action step is we really spent a lot of time last year through the new schedule work of what interventions look like at the 7-12 levels. So one of the things that came out at the middle school was intervention is part of a student's day. So it's a part of their actual schedule, as opposed to in the past, they would use their like flex time to meet with teachers to get more intervention. So now the 7-8 level students in need of literacy intervention get it daily for 50 minutes as a part of their class schedule. So that's something that's new, it's more targeted and it's daily. And then at the high school, one thing that we have realized over the last couple of years is that we have a lot of supports in place for our 9th grade students. Mainly, we have an English 9 algebra workshop class, and we also have an academic reading class. So this year, we implemented two new intervention classes at the high school, specifically targeting more our 10th grade students. So we implemented a geometry English 10 workshop, so targeting students that are in need of support beyond 9th grade. And then we also added a new course for freshmen, sophomores called Guided Study, which is a class helping students with different skills. So it can be writing, it can be LA, but it can also just be organizing their schedule, can be just getting support on how to take notes, how to study, how to do assessments, get help, targeted help from a teacher. So those are some intentional supports we put in place to make sure that students, when they transition from 9th to 10th, still have a successful experience. And we're working on trying to figure out now, our next steps are how would we then get that into 11th grade to continue those supports for students that are in need.
And then the final slide is just really our action plan moving forward. And as you heard, like these are multi-year action plans. And so many of those same action steps that we followed up on are continuing into this year and beyond. But specifically, we're doing a lot of work and using the teaching and learning framework and those super 6 strategies, which are like those high leverage evidence-based strategies that we are really focusing first with our leadership team. And so Kate, Chris, and I have been using our time, part of our time during our monthly leadership meetings to really kind of like name those strategies, really identify what do they look like, who's currently doing those strategies really well in their spaces or which departments, and then being able to think about how can we continue to grow all staff being able to have really strong knowledge about those evidence-based strategies and really kind of focusing on that tier 1 structure. So knowing that the MLSS system that we have and meeting the needs of everybody really starts at tier 1. So how do we make sure that that's the place that they're getting everything that they need, and then kind of continuing to use all the supports that we just discussed, for learners that maybe that's not enough, but really taking the time to continue to dig into those strategies.
I wanted to add a couple
Yeah.
things. I have the wonderful job of observing principals. And so last week I was observing Mr. Hipsch facilitate a PLC meeting, which is our professional learning community meeting with a whole grade level. And they were going through their students' data, and they share students for a period of the day for literacy. And I was really impressed with some of the things that they were really focused in on, really specific core interventions and also enrichments. And then it just reminded me of how hard it is to teach, because they also talked about just even trying to teach literacy to students that weren't like looking at the words. So just reminding them, like, you can't read if you're not looking at the words. And that brought it right back to the reality of, like, we talk about data at this level and it's really important, but it helps me to be in those spaces to remember, like, they're 7 and 8, and sometimes those teachers are working on, please look at the words. That's the starting point. I just thought I'd bring that reality back up. And so anything else from you guys right now? Otherwise, I do think this report is in we've marked it as reasonable progress with exceptions. There's things we're very proud of in here, and also things that we know we need to dig into and continue to work on.
Would somebody care to make a motion on the report?
I'll make a motion to approve the report as presented. Accept report, sorry.
Yep.
As it-
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Questions?
I've got just a couple on,
Go, go, go.
okay. I've just got a couple on some of the data points. When we're comparing it year over year, so like on page 4, and we say 3rd grade in 2024 to 3rd grade in 2025, that's not the same 3rd graders, right? And that's the data in the appendix where we look at, so like if we go down to like page 13 and you look at the
Actual
forward,
Yeah.
those are class of 2023, you can see, or actually
Progression.
2033, we can see the progression, right? Okay,
Awesome.
yeah, no, it is awesome. And that, I was just like, I was like, yes, we
Yeah.
finally got that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that correctly and pulling that out. And then the other thing I wanted to say, just with on page 4, we talk about those 3 groups that we saw the drop. They're not above state average. we might want to think about wording that better so it doesn't look like they have to meet all three of those things. It's truly that anybody in this group, anybody in this group, and anybody in this group were below state average. It's not that you have to meet these three requirements. You see what I'm saying, like how that's written? It wasn't clear that those, as you scroll through, you see it in the data, but you just might want to word that just a little bit better so we're catching that. Otherwise, those were just a couple of the things that I had, and, great job as always.
My question is, we talk about this, how do we keep kids away from AI? I mean, today, I wish I could go back in school and be like, write this horrible paper and then go, Copilot, please help me with my grammar and but a serious question though, we also want kids to learn how to use those tools. So obviously we want them to have the fundamentals of building the sentence correctly, but then how do we educate them on how to use those tools to help enhance their writing?
I would say there's two separate things, that you're identifying. The way we've shifted our instruction and writing, they're starting to understand conceptually, what is a sentence? What is a complete thought? And we want them to understand that because that's writing and understanding and reading it. But then the other portion of it is, once you're able to do that, how are you using technology well, respectfully or responsibly?
Yep.
And that's that digital citizenship. And that is work that we are continuing to work on as a district. And I know we have a new technology integration team that's working on that. And we have been doing work quite a bit on instruction on that. That's happening eventually collectively, but initially separately, because when I'm in first and second grade, I need to learn what good writing is before I can understand how that connects to digital citizenship.
Can we tell when they've used AI to write something?
Somewhat, yeah. There are some tools out there that you can put through generators and see. And then also just knowing the students and their writing, like that can always help too. It's not foolproof. AI is.
History helps too.
Yep.
So if you see that all the text comes in at once, that's a big indicator of like you copied it.
Pasted.
This is like I worked
Type
through.
it out.
Yeah.
Chris, we had a group just here tonight
Yeah.
on us teachers working with AI, right?
Yeah, and we were just talking about that specifically at the high school level. I do think it is our job to teach students how to use these tools because these are going to be a part of their future.
For sure.
And so we're really grappling with how we do that, how we share that information with them, how we teach them how to use it appropriately. It's a resource. It's not something that's supposed to do their work for them. However, there are some really great tools in there like that can help their critical thinking and problem solving skills. Or here's an idea, I want a thought partner to come in and try to help me with this. So there are different ways that our teachers are working on these tools with students. I'd say it's still in the really early stages in terms of what that looks like. But also like to your question, Gussie, like I think a lot of our teachers are also looking at how they're assessing students too. Instead of saying, hey, maybe just write a 5-page paper on this. They might be more explicit in terms of what they're looking for, so that it's harder for students to maybe AI generate that response. It allows them to put more of their thought into it. So I do think it goes both ways in terms of what our teachers are thinking about how they're sharing this. And I do think it is our role to help students understand these tools, but also getting student input on how they're using them so that we can better assist them. Because I know we're just working with UW-Madison. When they go there, they have access to Copilot and they have access to different tools. And I know in the workforce, my wife is using it every single day. So we do have to equip them to be able to navigate, maybe less about content knowledge, but more about critical thinking, problem solving, and then ethics. Like there's a lot of components to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are seeing a lot of teachers do with writing, where students are writing physically, not typing.
I like a
right.
Oh, like actual paper.
Right.
Oh.
Piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At times, that is what they also need to do. So it's a combination of things.
And I'd say because of AI, like going back to writing, we talked about earlier, one thing I was just talking with a teacher, and she was saying she believes that students are doing more writing than they've ever done because it's really easy for a student to go on and get an answer as opposed to like actually using their thoughts to create a response and think about like actually how to structure writing in terms of claim evidence reasoning. So our students are doing a lot of writing and in different ways than just questions they can look up and put down on a piece of paper too.
That is something the board is interested in. I know we have another board report where we have a digital citizenship component to it, but if you're interested in more information, we can also bring that as more board education to keep it in the forefront. That's something we want to continue to explore with our teachers and or students and staff.
I would love to hear more. I mean, it's going to be in our regular jobs, if it's not already, and so we need to educate, right?
Well, I know at the district office level, we use Gemini quite a bit to help with, it helps save time, so.
Do we own a subscription here in the school? Do we own are we paying for Copilot? Are we paying for any of it?
Gemini.
We're paying for
Gemini,
Gemini.
because it's Google.
Oh, that's who Google.
I have a question on assessments. I know we took away like the iReady assessment. Are we adding any more from a district perspective, like using something like, I think about like pre-ACT isn't really like, it's not really mandate, right? But it's something that we could use to assess our students. I know we say classroom assessments, but in like last year, I noticed we had iReady. Would we use any other tools as a district?
So we do use iReady and AimsWeb in the district, and I know the idea was when we had taken part of the, when we had revised the indicators, we knew we were going to have to revise regardless because K3 has to use AimsWeb now for literacy. So in that conversation, we'd had the discussion about how these are the state mandated tests, and then the building plans are coming forth with the principals where they use the iReady and the AimsWeb to help monitor student progress throughout the year to get more actionable feedback. That's how they determine needs for intervention groups, and they are planning on coming and sharing that.
I just wonder if when we do that, I mean, I know we're using them, it might be helpful if we list what district assessments we are using, because I feel like you guys know what they are, right? And so we have iReady and we have Amplify and we have, you know, all these other things that I feel like we're not, I don't want people to think, and I know we're not, but we're not just testing for forward and ACT. We have all these other tools that we're using data from to measure our student success. And so when you took that away, I was kind of like, I know it says classroom assessment, but.
That was my decision.
Okay.
And we debated it.
Sorry.
about-
I mean,
No,
it's just me, but I was
and
like,
Feedback.
that is good feedback. If we want the profile in the report to be all of the assessments, we thought it should just be the ones that were that we were, presenting.
Yep.
But if you want it to be a part of the whole profile of what we do for a student, we can put it back in there too. There's quite a few assessments that we give. I mean, access and for ELL students.
and I
too.
don't know if it has to be, I mean, I just know that
It's just iReady
in
is
there.
is no longer a measured
Measured.
indicator in R2. That's why it was taken out.
gotcha.
But you will be getting that information, just like our principals use it for progress monitoring. We want to use it with the board about progress monitoring mid-year.
I was interested to hear more about this Quill program. Because I know it's new at the higher levels. What does that entail, like as far as monitoring the progress for interventions?
Yeah, so students do, like at the beginning of the year, they'll do a pre-assessment. So it'll sort of level them in terms of where they're at, in terms of like, right now they're focusing a lot on grammar, punctuation, capitalization, things like that. So it'll level them, and then teachers can do daily or weekly, like essentially lessons with them, and the students will pick up where they're at. And then the program will automatically level students as they continue to progress through.
This is all students or just identified ones that?
All students. Mhm. Yep.
All students at the high school or from first grade?
Sixth grade.
All students.
And I would say more primarily 610, or yeah, 610, because that's starting in 11th grade, they have more choice in what classes they take.
It was just something that I
610.
appreciated when you looked at like some of the action plan steps. A lot were focused on, we have this new Amplify curriculum for the
Mhm.
younger ages, and we're doing stuff for 4K, which is great, right? But then I think about the progression and we see some of those older age groups, like 8th grade and maybe even like the ACT that are struggling. And how are we providing, additional resources for that group or cohort as well?
And I would say our teachers are the main driver of that. Like we know this has been a gap in our instruction. And so they spent a lot of time, our middle school teachers, and our high school went and visited our middle school teachers last year to learn more about it, to figure out how this supplements and then embedding it within their curriculum. So I would say it's very teacher driven in terms of this being a really good tool to help with those things that we are definitely seeing gaps in.
And we're hoping eventually it'll fade away because the gaps are being filled now instructionally at the lower levels, but it's going to take some time, which is why this quill is a really nice resource.
I just wondered, in terms of the quills, said it's focused on grammar and writing. So is it focused on grammar lessons or grammar integrated into writing assignments?
I'd say they're more separate. Like there's grammar lessons, but then there's specific writing prompts that they can do within it too, using some of the tools.
To actually use?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's both.
Yeah.
And then the other question was, how is the partnership with the Greater Madison Writing Project? How, you know, how intense is that? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's a couple different uses. We have some teachers that do some summer academies with them to do some learning workshops, specifically around writing instruction, and AI is actually a big piece of that component too. They're working with us. They were just with us actually right before this, doing some work around how we can tailor our writing instruction with the use of AI and kind of working through that. But they're also going to be partnering with our high school core teachers this year to really help understand what this looks like in their core content areas. And I think the bigger work is then making sure that all teachers are able to assess that student writing sort of in alignment, so that the things that they're seeing in an English class or social studies or whatever class, the feedback is very similar in terms of what they're getting. So it goes beyond just the English department.
So we're more systematically preparing kids when they graduate to be able to be writers in college or whatever they decide to do.
Yeah, and I talked about with AI earlier, but I would say the grading for learning work, like specifically at the high school and the work the middle school is doing too, is going to support writing work even more because it's more focused on skill based. And a lot of those are students doing deeper thinking, which is going to lend itself to more writing instruction as well.
I have a question about Ames. I know that there was a implementation curve and that we were ahead of the curve. Now that we're fully into it, are we seeing any benefits, or is it helping with the progress of students, or is this just another assessment tool?
I would say elementary has found it to be a better support in getting more accurate data about students and literacy than iReady was. I will say that there's still some gaps in it where it might be a time. So when you do letter sounds and they give you 1 minute, I might not have given all the sounds. So I don't truly know how many sounds you truly know when I can go through them all. However, part of Act 20 is you do students that have flag, then you do additional assessments and learn more. And so when I think about what Dr. Tate was talking about at Eagle Point, I was at Windsor for the same conversations last week. And they are able to identify the students that are below the 25th. They're able to provide those supports. And then we have another tool, FastRes, that monitors progress. So we are weekly monitoring their progress. And so then when staff are sitting down, they have the Ames rep to know that they are at risk, but then they have so many other data points to really say, well, what is the gap? What intervention do I need? Are they making progress? And monitoring that to really follow up on students. So it's been a lot of work. I will say our elementary are feeling it, but at the same time, they're feeling very informed about students.
So adding to that, the PLC that I got to see was second grade, and I would say that was probably the most prescriptive conversation I've heard about a large group of readers with a large team that I've seen in my career, honestly. So I think the work that Ames Web and Science of Reading, we're going to see the dividends pay off, or we will start to see that even more, because those teachers were able to really talk about, you know, the students that were in this range and exactly what skills they were missing, including looking at the words, but but mostly it was, you know, it was really prescriptive down to like exact letter chunks, the phonemes that they need to focus in on, a fluency rate, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
very prescriptive is what I would say is
Yeah.
that I was impressed with.
And I would say like even they were able to say, well, they were able to demonstrate that skill orally, but then when they have to encode it, when they have to read it or when they have to write it, I'm not seeing it there. Or they can orally hear it, but when they visually see it, they can't. And so they were able to really parcel it out even to that minute detail. So no, this is what they really truly need to help them because I'm seeing it here, not here. Because I've never heard conversations like
The
that.
other thing that I think will happen too with time, and I know it's happening now, but even more so is when we are teaching phonics, and then sometimes what would happen is when a student gets to like first or second grade, and we're like, you know what, they're reading really quite well. Like they're able to pick up a, you know, a beginning chapter book. Let's stop teaching phonics because they've got it now. We've learned that actually that can backfire then when they get to fifth, sixth grade and they're now tackling long multi-syllable words. They didn't have the skills to actually get through, you know, decode those multi-syllable words. Readers were using just context, which is also an important skill, is to have that too. So I think that Ames Web has really provided that, or the work of science of reading has really provided that.
Well, I would say Amplify is the resource that helps us, that has those strategies embedded. So now it has explicit phonics instruction, kindergarten, first and second, that build on each other. And then at third grade, it shifts to what we call morphology. When you start to think of those chunks of words that have meaning, help you with prefixes and suffixes and how that changes words. So third, fourth, and fifth gets progressively harder on that complexity. So by the time they're done with fifth grade, they should be able to understand Greek words, roots, Latin roots, and be able to then decipher and read more complex words. And it's explicitly integrated into the curriculum. So we have the resource to do that. And then we also have teachers trained on if students need a few more repetitions than what was offered within Amplify, then we have interventions that also help support that so they can get it.
I think what excites me most is that we have this data and they're using it. They're using it to help kids on all levels, right? And like when you talk about that, the conversations that are happening, I think that's what excites me. Yes, like you can say we have all these tools, right? And I'm not even sure I know how to do Greek prefixes. Or you just said at fifth grade, I probably don't know how to do. You know, like that's great, like that we have that, but then the kids that don't, or even the ones that are excelling that need more, like we were able to identify that and use that data, and that's a pretty cool thing. Any other questions, comments?
Good.
I was gonna say, so I appreciate the cohort data, I guess. Has presenting the cohort data changed anything in your world in terms of how you're thinking about things or driven behaviors at all? Or is that something you're already kind of looking at, just not reporting to us?
I'd say it's something we're looking at. One thing I can say from the upper levels that we've spent more time on looking at this data is how we support through interventions. So like I said, we see a dip from 9th to 10th grade in here. That's something that we've noticed over time. So it's something that we've spent more time as an intervention team at the high school, like really helping problem solve how we better support learners. So I would say that's one tangible example that seeing this, it's like, it really affirms that the work we're doing is we're putting the effort in the right place. Because it is a group that traditionally, like there is a gap between 9th and 10th grade. So that's one example that I've used it for.
I also think because we've added as a district an intermediate school, we have more transitions than some districts that don't have that. So I think it's really important that at the district level, we are the drivers of that cohort. Like we want our principals and teacher leaders to really pay attention to those transition years. Because if we don't, it's not like we have, you know, if they get to the middle school, they only have 2 years here. So we can't afford to lose time in getting to know them again.
I will say too, the forward data is a nice dipstick to see how we're doing in relation to what we use on a more regular basis. But I will say too, not necessarily with the cohort data, but thinking about all the work with Act 20 at elementary, that's been really a very heavy lift for them. And this year, the work is really thinking about how does that transition up to Harvest. And so I've been working a lot with Harvest to see what are the best data points to make sure that we're really identifying students and what their needs are, and then using forward as another dipstick to see how does it align with what the other assessments we're using.
Yeah, Sue, any other questions?
observation maybe that the subgroups we saw some decline in them, and I just wondered if it was an expression of a small group, that you have small groups, so any change in that, you have 4 people and then they shift because they've moved on, right? You guys, the next group comes in and it's another small group, and whether that has an impact, they're not achieving as well as the group that just left. So you're seeing a dip in scores. Is this small group phenomenon, or is it something more systemic?
An example, I saw that too, like the
Yeah.
English learners, they went from 33 last year to 5, but I'm assuming that our group was small, but I did make that assumption.
Yeah, right.
That's why I like seeing the cohorts.
Mhm.
I mean, like, that's why I can appreciate that data, because you would be able to kind of track that progress of that group, whether it's small or large.
And I will say that's definitely a factor. I mean, it's different students. When you think about our multilingual learners, there's various factors that play a part. Where is their English language proficiency? What access score are they at? They do get a first year exemption, so knowing that the students change every year, that could be they had an exemption year, then it's their first year taking it, and it just changes.
Yeah, but it's because it's a small group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The swings look
Variance,
sometimes, right?
Yes.
One of the things on the capacity building is your caseload for special ed. And I mean, where do you see your numbers at? Are you able to maintain that and find special ed teachers and keep it where you?
Yeah, I would not get. So, I mean, I would say that I don't want to say like, oh, yes, it's going to be easy, because I think like it's, unfortunately, I think it's going to get more and more challenging. Just based on like what we're hearing from universities about, folks that are going into special education, like preparation programs and things like that. And so I'm really I'm thrilled at the hires that we had this year, so that we were able to keep those caseloads at the, what we're wanting to think, and knowing that as our district continues to grow, we're just going to continue to need to hire more case managers so we can keep those ratios in that place. We don't want to grow and have those caseloads grow too, knowing that that will slow our work down. And so it's just really like utilizing, hopefully having that will be a selling point for teachers to want to come here, is that our caseloads are going to be a manageable size. Like that will be something that we will say is like, we're doing this good work and we're committed to it. And so like that, I appreciate that we are committed to that, because that will help us get strong candidates.
Yeah, it definitely, and it retains our current current teachers. And then the other thing is we're always looking for educational assistants that may be interested in pursuing their license. We have a couple right now that are working on theirs. We have a partnership with Edgewood College where they get a reduced tuition rate, and basically trying to grow our own as well. But having those lowercase management sizes is huge to retaining staff. That is a question at probably every interview you've had, is what is your average caseload?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And in the long run, it helps our students.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's like, right. Our service delivery model is much stronger when they have capacity. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I guess,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as you look back on this year and you look at all the work that you guys have done, which is quite a bit, and you look at the capacity building, is there anything you think, boy, I wish we'd spent less time on this or more time on that, anything like that?
That's a really good question. I mean, my gut instinct is not necessarily, because I feel like we're really moving in the right direction, and I think it takes time, and I think change takes time. And so I think about, we put a lot of time and energy into things, but I feel like it's the right thing. So when you think about data literacy and understanding how to have our students become proficient readers, like that's really good work, but it takes time. We haven't arrived. It's a work in progress, and I think every little bit is important. I think the standards-based learning helps enhance that, because it helps us make sure that we are clear on what we want students to learn and be able to do, which is that's a high impact practice on John Hattie's visible learning work. So it's a lot of work. It's a heavy lift, and I feel like it's the right work. It's where it's getting us and our students what they need.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one other observation. I love the joint, the partnerships and the shared ownership for kids, because that has not always been true. And I really sense that you know, as you describe how you're moving forward to meet the needs of all children. It's shared, it's not special ed versus general. And also co-design and co-teaching. I mean, it just makes sense. And so everybody's working together and getting this, you know, shared training, you know, cross training as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion on the report.
I will make a motion to approve the report as written.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to public input, which I have none. Brings us to board consent agenda. Somebody care to make that motion?
I will move. Agenda.
Thank you, Sue.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That brings us to superintendent consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. We have a motion on this to approve the superintendent's consent agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That brings us to press verification, and I have none. Brings us to board debrief of meeting.
It was short and sweet.
We were talking about agenda planning, whether having on previous item, on previous agendas after the policy, we talked about reviewing the policy.
Oh, yeah.
And rather than, you know, looking at the actual policy, I came up with a couple of questions I thought would be good to ask. And since we're so close to the policy, we should just go for it right here, right? So one question is, does the policy get us the data that we need? So think about what we just went through and then see if you can answer that one. And then does that data provide evidence that the policy is being implemented? So I'd pose those two questions and then ask people to reflect for a while. And then,
Yeah.
possibly give an answer.
I'd say usually in the results policies, this one in particular is no different, that we get more than enough data. And I can appreciate that the data is relevant and it still shows that we have areas of growth, right? And that there were some changes made to the indicators to continue improving. And we've talked about that with other ones as well, how to keep the bar on a continuous improvement. So my answer is yes and yes.
When you think about the policy, and that's what it's posing to
Yes.
everybody. Is the policy getting us the data? And I think we've gotten a lot of data that seems to point towards the direction we want to go. So I'd say the policy is probably working, doesn't need to be relooked at. And that for the most part, the data is showing that the policy is being implemented, that it's working. Because you can have a policy and it could be a lovely policy, but is it having the results that you want? And this is a results policy, so you'd really want it to make sure that it was giving you results, so.
I would agree that we've got the data. I also think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think that our team actually looks at way more data than we get presented to us. And sometimes I don't feel like they get the credit that they do deserve in all of the work that they do. Because I mean, I get it. You gotta be, make it so that it's an executive report and that it's the way it needs to be. But yeah, I think that what we currently have is great, and it's fun to now see the cohort data too and really compare those grades all the way through.
Any other thoughts?
I think there's always, there's so much data available, right? It's hard to pick the most coherent and impactful things for a report like this, but I think that, and I'd be curious what Rebecca thinks, but I do feel like the policy has driven results. I feel like it does seem like in the last 3 to 5 years, there's been a lot of collaboration in the schools to really align everything. So I definitely can feel that when I hear these reports.
Yeah, the board policies really drive our action plans and action steps. And yes, we're looking at a lot more data because we want to be more prescriptive and react to it faster. This is high level data.
The other thing I thought, was thinking about in terms of complexity is, they're talking about partnerships within schools, but also, as you were saying, transitions across schools, that we actually have more than some districts. And that's a challenge, but it's also, we've seen evidence of the alignment, again, so people are connected pre-K, 12, rather than school by school, or even then level by level.
What was interesting on that was when you really look at what Jan was asking, we've aligned our policies to match that, right?
Right.
So like, I think that as things come forward, we have, and they've changed indicators, maybe not necessarily the policy, but, you know, to match our specific buildings, right? So that we can monitor the data that comes before us and it's more, I guess, accurate. Thoughts?
When I look at the policy, it is a large ask. You know, each student will be literate and numerate, and so on and so forth. And I think the way that we have the policy written, the district has done a good job of creating interventions and supports for each student. And it'll be good when we do arrive.
Gussie, any thoughts?
We'll celebrate.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I'm looking at the policy now, and as Stephanie said, you know, it's really broad. It is a big ask, and that was a lot of data. But you can see the improvement. You can see the method, right, sort of behind the madness. And that we're not just flying blind and all over the place. You know, we're sticking to it. It's a progression. It takes time. And we're catching more and more students who need the help. I thought what they had mentioned about how students are getting intervention every day instead of during their flex. That's really important, the consistency, the time. And so from when I look at this policy, we drafted it, we wrote it in such a way, you know, like you said, it's just an overarching policy, you know, it's really big. So I think we're getting what we want from it, you know, because we left so much space, right, to do that.
Sue, any thoughts?
My thought in connection to this, as we looking at the data, but any of the questions that we asked of the report or of the directors, does that spark a change in what we're looking for? If we asked a question tonight, is it for something we want that isn't there? I don't know if I'm.
I
You know
get
what I'm saying? So, and then again, not necessarily to be answered right now, but it's the idea of that, are we getting the data that we want? Are we seeing the information we want? So if we had a question about something, is it because it was missing? Was it clarification? You know, was there, so.
Any other thoughts? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.